This is problem number 11 on the sample test problems for test number 2. The graph of a sinusoidal function is given below. A, estimate the amplitude, midline, and period of the sinusoidal function. Okay, so I'll start with the midline. So the midline is the number that's right in the middle. Let's see, so thinking about the scale here, it looks like all of these boxes vertically represent 2's. So that's 2, and then 4, and then 6, and then 8. And then down here at the bottom is -2. So the top is 6, the bottom is -2. So if I'm trying to find the midline, we just need to go right to the middle. So 6 and -2, and I want the number that's halfway. Okay, so certainly you could just count boxes. I'll just go ahead and average the two numbers. And we get the midline is 2, and that makes sense here. Don't forget that the midline is an equation, it's a line. So the midline is at y equals 2. Okay, that looks reasonable. The amplitude is how far you are from the midline. I think we call it A. And the amplitude, let's see, so from the middle to the top, that's going from 2 to 6, that's a 4. You could also go from the middle to the bottom, 2 to the -2 is also 4. Remember, amplitude is always positive. And then finally, the period of the function. So the period has to do with the horizontal. The first two things we found have to do with the vertical. So the period is how long it takes to do one complete cycle. So for example, you could pick this point right here, which is at the bottom, and pick another point that's the next bottom. And how far do we have to go? Let's see, I guess these are also 2's on the horizontal. So the period here is 6. Likewise, you could pick 2 points that are at the top. And in this case, I guess if we assume that that's at 3, and then that next one here is 9, then again, we get the period at 6. You could also pick 2 points that are in the middle. You could pick any 2 points, just have to correspond to each other. But things become trickier as you pick different points. I suppose I'm comfortable picking this point to this point, and counting boxes and getting 6, but it becomes awkward to say pick that point, even though it's on the midline and it seems like it's a nice point. You know, it's hard for me to know exactly what that number is down there and what that number is. I'm sure they're 6 apart, but not from looking at those 2 points. Part B, give a possible formula for the sinusoidal function. There are lots of different possible answers, possible right answers for this one. I'll just write down one of them. Because on the y-axis, this point, this graph starts at the bottom, and I say starts with kind of quotes around it, but I could think of it as starting at the bottom. Well, the sine function normally starts, again, with quotes in the middle. And cosine normally starts at the top. So if I want something to start at the bottom, well, it doesn't feel like it's a sine because sine starts in the middle, but it feels like maybe it's a negative cosine. So I think for me, most naturally, the graph that we're looking at in this picture is a negative cosine. So all we have to do is put the right pieces in. So the thing that goes in the front is the amplitude. So the amplitude is 4, so it's -4 cosine. Thing that goes in the parentheses, well, you can call it x or t, but more importantly, you need to deal with the period. And the thing that goes in here is always 2 pi divided by the period. And the period we found was 6. So 2 pi over 6, which reduces to pi over 3. So pi over 3 goes right in there. There is some space inside of here for a horizontal shift. And if you pick a different function, like a positive cosine or a sine if you want, then you need to do some horizontal shifting. But we have chosen the function negative cosine, so we don't need to do any horizontal shifting. But we do need to adjust for the midline. Remember, the midline just gets added on the outside. The midline in this case is y equals 2, so we put a +2 out there. And certainly you could graph this thing on your calculator, type that equation in, and just double check that it matches the graph that's in the picture.